Hi, everybody. How you doing? Dr. Theresa Phillips here from Destiny Arising. Tonight I have with me my husband, who was, in my opinion, quite a hero on 9/11. He took charge of the Air Force fleet that was guarding the president. And we have operations from Team 1, Team 2, and Team 3 patches that he earned during his time. And tonight is 9/11, and I'm going to move you in a little bit closer. And because it is 9/11, I'm going to interview him. And there's some things that I may ask him that you're not allowed to say. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Or you won't.
Won't answer them in a way that you might.
Okay. And then there might be some things that he can say. But we are going to go live on Facebook for just a little bit. Let's see. I'm working on it. I don't know. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting here. Let's see. I'm trying. I'll be trying. I'm telling you, I'll be trying. Okay, we're going to get out of there and we're going to try it again because there could be a lot of people on Facebook tonight. So I don't know. I don't know. So Robert, I just don't know. And we're going live on Facebook.
And Zoom.
And Zoom. Zoomy. Okay, we're going live. And there might be questions asked, but we can't always answer them because we won't be seeing the live feed on Facebook. Because this is actually for Destiny Arising.
Which
So-
is next weekend.
Which is next weekend. So we're not going to let everybody see everything that's going on. It's just not going to happen. Okay, now we are live on Facebook, and that's really cool. Robert, when you were with the Air Force fleet, for Air Force One on 9/11, it is my understanding, and please step in and interject. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, ladies and gentlemen, because I have my own story on 9/11, but his is much more exciting. Share with the people about the fact that you were in an exercise and the shocking moments that happened. Just look into that camera, that green dot, and share that.
Well, yeah.
And I'll stop you and interject if I need to
Well, that's
to
good.
ask questions. Is that cool?
Well, that's all right.
Oh, that's great.
Well, no, I can tell you this much, is that we were actually already building up to a worldwide exercise with all our allies and everything before 9 o'clock on 9/11.
I mean 9:00 a.m.
Yes,
Okay, and that would be Eastern time.
right, when the festivities started.
Mhm.
And initially, when we were doing, we're doing what we're supposed to do, I just launched out my airplane, which was the last one at the moment at the base, with that particular size, Air Force Two stuff. We figured that, okay, we did what we were supposed to do. There was nothing there, and I went back to my room waiting for the return of the first airplanes because I had a team of 2 other guys, actually 3 other guys. One guy, well, I'm not going to get into
No,
that too
not
much,
yet.
but 2 other guys that were on my team that were the ground crew
Mhm.
when Air Force One came into Offutt. This is what this is all about.
Offutt is, some of you that may not know, could you explain what Offutt is?
Offutt is a Strategic Air Command headquarters.
Okay, and that's stationed in Nebraska, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Just trying to clarify for the sake of the people.
Yeah.
I've been to Offutt, ladies and gentlemen. Powerful place. I loved it.
Yeah, and they really got flooded a couple years ago.
Yeah, I know.
Really
God
bad.
help them.
And actually our hangars were flooded pretty bad. But we launched the airplanes, and I get back to my room after we got all this done, and I have CNN on. I believe that's what it was, and I'm watching the TV, and all of a sudden the guy comes around and says, "Well, we're under attack. We tower was hit." I'm like, okay. My first thought was, we're in an exercise.
Right.
Okay. Now,
Because you were initially in a global
exercise.
exercise.
So I figured that this wasn't maybe national, but this was actually like in closed circuit TV,
Right.
whatever, thinking that
Right.
this is just to create a simulation.
Right.
So what,
So you felt like you,
we-
so what we would call, this would be like simulated driving exercise, but only this was Air Force.
Yeah. So when the guy came around, I said, well, okay. And then just as soon as he finished speaking, I seen the second plane come into the tower, the one tower. And I'm like, okay, I guess this isn't real. And as soon as that or this is real, as soon as that plane hit, there was a klaxon. For you that don't know, that's what the military calls when you get called into an alert status where the country is under attack and it involves nuclear weapons, all kinds of stuff. Okay. So we got called into a closed quarters, closed ramp, closed anything until we can get a grasp on what's going to go on. And so as soon as that happened, I had a officer come around a corner and start asking me some questions that were kind of out of character because I was only an E6. I was a tech sergeant. Okay, I was a mid-level supervisor, and he came and started asking me some questions about what I wanted to do. What about this? What about? I'm like, and I'm
Now,
thinking,
these, ladies and gentlemen, are questions because the president is coming in with the entire command staff.
yeah, but see, I didn't know that. at the time.
Right.
I didn't know what was actually happening. After I seen the second plane come in, I knew that we were actually at war. And actually the first ramp supervisor was actually removed because he started actually freaking out.
So he couldn't handle
He couldn't handle
the
it
fact that you had gone from exercise
to
reality.
to real war.
to reality. Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. So
Especially if they're trying to.
so I asked this major to said, can you please remove him so we can figure out what we got to do. At this time, I still did not know what was going to happen. I'm so sorry for my other two crew members. I was so focused on what we had to do. I had two other ground crew members with me that helped me handle these airplanes. And mind you, it was 3 747s, Air Force One, Air Force Two, Air Force Three. And usually that takes a crew of about 16, probably about eight per airplane. And there was only 3 of us.
So
And
that's 21 people.
yeah, and there was only 3 of us because all of a sudden everything's really kind of squeezed down security wise. You know what I mean? You can't let people come in that you don't know, and you can't just let it free flow like we usually do. I don't mean that in a negative
I know,
way.
I know.
Okay, regular operations. You can't let that happen. You got to tighten up things. So he asked me. The first question he asked me is, "Or did I want this other person to come back in because we might need a 4th person?" I said, "Absolutely not."
So you actually, with your commander that came in
Mhm.
and asked you if you could take care of what was about to happen. At this point, you were unaware of totally what everything that had happened. You just knew that you were on alert status and you had to take charge, which, ladies and gentlemen, an E6 does not do.
No, it never happened before, and
And
will
it'll
probably
never happen
again. I had a few of those moments, but that's a whole nother story.
That's another story.
And so he asked me the questions, and I said, "Okay, no." I said, "I think we can happen." And finally, he told me what was about to happen.
Mhm.
Now,
And some of that you don't need to know.
no, and when he told me this, that doesn't mean I was able to tell my ground crew members actually what was going to
Which
happen.
now you only had 2, right?
Right. Well, we were fine. We'll be able to handle it. We knew it.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to get this. A crew of
Six
8
to eight-
per plane,
6 to 8, yes.
8 per plane, 6 to 8 people per plane is now down to 3 people for 3 planes.
But we didn't know it was 3 planes.
Right.
We just knew there was something that probably our plane was returning that we just launched out.
I see.
So that's why I made the decision that I did and said, okay, we'll be able to handle that. Well,
So you're not totally aware at this time. You know that we're at war, but you're not really sure what's about to happen in the next few minutes, so that you feel that you can handle this with the 2 other flight crew that you have,
well, actually,
or
no,
air crew, I should say.
I cannot say that we were able to handle whatever we can get. I'm not trying to be
Okay.
egotistical or
No,
nothing.
no.
But
I'm
we
just trying to clarify
But we
it for
still
them.
did not have clarification that President Bush at the time was going
It's on his way.
was going to be landing in off at Air Force Base.
Right where you were at.
We still did not know that
Mhm.
was going to happen. We knew we had a couple of our planes coming back,
Yeah,
and that's all I knew. I actually knew there was one, mine was coming back definitely
yeah,
because he had to come pick us up.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we don't leave nobody behind,
Nobody left behind at that
and they
time.
were coming to pick us up, and get supplies, whatever we needed, and then uh, within about 10 minutes after we started setting up to receive the first airplane, then this major told me, said, hey, Air Force One is coming in. I said, what? You know, I'm in Offutt, I'm in Air Force Two. We don't usually deal with Air Force One. Well,
But you're part of the crew of Air Force
well,
One.
yeah.
You have to understand that there's
Air
more
Force
than one plane.
747 that flies with Air Force One.
Yeah, there's more
absolutely.
than one plane. So he's the other plane.
Yeah, we're like the ghost airplane, if you want
Yeah.
to call it that. So I said, okay, he's coming in. So when? Well, of course they can't tell me, which is fine. And there probably wasn't really.
And so he's on his way back from Florida
Yes.
because he's in a conversation and he's with all these children at this school. And I forget, pardon me, I
In
apologize.
Florida.
I forget the name of the man that whispered in his ear, and we all saw the look on President Bush's face while he tried to maintain composure
Mhm.
and not alarm the children. I found that to be absolutely an amazing moment that he went out of his way not to alarm the children,
Right.
knowing that the United States was just under attack. But he knew that you were in a global exercise because he's the president.
Well, yeah,
And so
because he's all part of it. When you
yeah,
start
he's
doing
part of the global
you start doing
exercise. Yeah.
you do these things. It's not just that. It's for the communications, what's going to go happen, what's going to go down, how things are going to be handled. So you have to do these things with your allies. Otherwise, you run about like somebody throwing dice, wondering where it's
Right.
going to go.
So you're at Offutt, okay?
Mhm.
This is where I saw him first with that Offutt. That's my story later. I'm telling you, while you're doing this, I get a phone call
Mhm.
a little after 8 in the morning. A local pastor says, will you open your doors? And I'm like, why? Now I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning writing my book.
Now remember, well, I want to tell you all this if you didn't know. We didn't know each other.
We didn't know each other at the time, but I was up until almost 3 o'clock in the morning writing my book. And that's the Ambassador's Prayer Guide.
Mhm.
And I was writing my book. So I had no idea what was happening because I slept in that morning a little bit after 8, maybe almost 8:30. I think it was like 8:25 or something like that. I had a tap on my shoulder. You got to get up and go to the church. And I said, well, why? They said, because we're at war. I didn't even bat an eye. And there was a pastor on the other end of the phone saying, will you open your doors? Doors are open. I'm dressing, brushing my teeth and dressing while I'm on my way to the church, not knowing, because back then we didn't have the mobile phones we have now.
Right.
And I'm on my way to the church and I haven't seen a thing. I just know that the doors are open, which is interesting because we're the smallest church in the community and it was our doors that were open. Not knowing that Robert at the very same time was preparing to have the president of the United States land within feet of him. So go ahead. You have 3 people that were, can I just say this,
My
like
ground
on the
crew.
top, your ground crew, and one of them you have to dismiss because he's not
No, there
mentally,
was 4.
there were 4. So you had to dismiss one because he wasn't mentally able?
Yeah.
He emotionally wasn't able.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
And so when I found out what was going to happen, now of course we didn't have a time frame, but of course I got to tell you folks, if you've never seen this, you've seen it in small airplanes like fighters and whatnot in air shows. Well, when you see one 747 come around and land, and then you have to put it in its spot. The second 747 that came around and landed was Air Force One. The third airplane that came around was another Air Force Two that landed on the opposite side. Contrary to popular belief, what we are is, other than just the extra communication airplane or whatever for the president, we're also the hot decoy. So if there's a heat-seeking missile, guess who's going to get it first?
You guys,
Which is,
am I right? You guys would have been,
that's
they
right.
would have been the target if anything was actually coming
Right.
toward their AF1, right?
Right. And that was the whole purpose of it, to protect the president at all
At all times.
at all times. So, yeah, so I know my plane comes in, we put it down,
Mhm.
and we get parked on the spot. Mind you, we're not able to go, the planes are put into sections. You're not able to cross the security section until the security police that are actually on the airplane, security area. Okay,
Approximately how big is that staff?
what this, I ain't gonna say.
You can't. Okay, all right. Zip.
Uh,
I ask a lot of questions. He
They have-
always tells me I can't.
they have to go out and they have to secure the perimeter and around the aircraft within the spot.
Okay,
But they have to come out first. Well, we got our plane in, Air Force One in, the third airplane in, and then I had the same major, I believe it was a major, came and said, "Hey, is it clear for us to bring in the people to come pick up the people on airplanes, the ones that need to go into the security areas,
command centers.
the command center."
Yeah.
And now I've never been trained that, was never taught that, was never realized that that was what was going to happen. And now he's asking me this, and I'm just a mid-level supervisor. And I said, I kind of give him that look like, yeah, I believe it's clear because all the planes already had their security out there, had their areas secured. I said, I think it's clear to come in. And then he started asking me about the procedures on how I wanted to come in. Now, mind you, it's not just your security people. You got press people, you got all kinds of people that are on these buses, okay, and that are on the airplanes, okay, because they want to record what's going on, right, in the military. So, and what we're doing. So I said, yeah, okay, bring them in. And then they came in. Well, they got the people off the airplane. I remember seeing President Bush. I got to tell you this. I tell people this is where she supposedly thought it was like the hot thing because I was in a flight suit.
Mm.
And it was only me walking in front of these three airplanes
And I saw him that night.
in airplanes, in front of these airplanes, making sure everything was all set. And then after they got the people out that needed to leave, they asked me, was it okay to bring in the fuel in?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, never been asked that question before because, you think, okay, well, yeah, I already gave your permission once, but no, that's not the case. I said, okay, bring him in. So they asked me for each spot. Was it clear to bring it in? Was it clear?
So you were actually for each flight. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we can't tell you who were on those flights. We know one of them was the president, and
Mhm.
we know one of them was Condoleezza Rice.
I don't know about that.
Okay, we don't know about that.
I thought she was back in Washington, but
She might have been. She might have been because I've talked to a couple other people
Mhm.
at the time. But when you were talking about flights coming in, I want to make it clear to the people that are watching that these were high level personnel that were coming in that don't normally land. Am I right? Within,
that close proximity to
Yeah.
each other, right? You usually don't have three 747s landing
at all.
like fighters on an air show.
Yeah.
And most of you all know what a fighter air show is. You got five roaring down the runway. Well, this happened. They were coming in one at a time, 747s, and we put them on their spots. Now, mind you, the crew members and I, we weren't able to get to the areas. Once they're secured, we're not able to get to the areas. I can just give them permission to do what they have to do.
Right. Now, at this time, when you were giving them permission to do what they have to do, now, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand, I'm interviewing him. So a lot of the things that you're hearing, I've heard some before, and some of the things I've not heard before. So when you were securing what you called the first time when I was at Offutt with you, because he showed me where all this was at. When you were securing the tarmac and all this area, and you were doing this, you still did not know who all was actually going to come in. You just knew that you had to prepare to land these planes. Is that correct?
Well, no, we're kind of going backwards a little bit.
Maybe.
Because
And I
I
apologize.
didn't know by after the first airplane, because they told me that Air Force One was coming in next.
But did you know who the second planes were going to be after that?
I knew all,
Oh, you did? Okay.
yeah, I already knew those.
Oh, I didn't
'cause
know.
those are my guys.
Okay,
So my guys, my other teams.
okay.
So I knew it was one of the teams that were out already. And so I already knew that much. Well, I gave them permission. My crew and I um, assist them the best that we could, because the planes have their own crews on.
Right. Now,
Even my plane was short 3 people, but I still was not able to get into there until we actually had to have enough people with the maintenance team to be able to take care of what needs to be taken care of.
okay, now in the next phase of this, because I know we have to stop that part right there. Because I've talked to him before. And now we're gonna go into that next phase where you had to go into the air.
Mhm.
And this was, President Bush did actually have an argument with Condoleezza Rice about getting back to the White House.
I knew nothing about that at the
He didn't
time.
know about it at the time, but it did happen. And the president did go back to the White House. We all know that. But there was something that many of you do not know what happened in order to protect our airspace, because we were technically at war at this moment, correct?
Right, now, to back up a little bit where she's
Okay.
going from. Okay, we got the plane secured, we got them fueled up,
Right,
we got them supplied up,
right,
and we got them ready to go.
right,
And then the president comes back.
right.
They said, was it okay for the people to come back? That was another one of the questions. I said, yes, it is.
Mhm.
And then it was per spot. Well, we launched out the first airplane. I gotta tell you, I'm still saying this is one of the most awesomest sights. I can see it in my head right now. If you've never seen it, 747s. We've seen all T-38s and fighters going out. One 747 going out. One 747, which happens to be Air Force One, and they're taxiing down the runway. Get down to the end of the runway. You see, and then my plane taxis out. I stop them before they finish the turn. I climb up inside because I'm the last one on the ramp,
Yeah,
and we follow them out. And you got 1, 2, 3 planes up there. And once we got into the air, my particular plane, we flew for 16 hours.
yeah. Now this is,
Now the other planes, I don't know what their full
right.
schedules were, but I knew.
And if he did, he wouldn't tell.
Well, no, because I don't know.
Yeah.
But we flew for about 16 hours doing figure eights around
Now,
Washington,
why did
DC,
you have to do figure eights around Washington DC?
because we wanted to make sure that the airspace was clear, and that the airspace was clear that if the president had to take off again, that it would be okay.
Now, I want to ask you a question. I think I've asked you this before in an interview, so I'm sorry if it's redundant, but Robert, when you were up in the air, it's almost common knowledge now that every country, so to speak, or every head of state or whatever has its own airspace.
Mhm.
You had made mention to me a long time ago that if anyone had entered into that airspace that you guys were in, that was really not a good thing to do if it came from another country. Is that true?
Yes and no.
Okay,
Um, for this particular time, no.
okay.
Okay. We were just in to make sure that we were on airplanes flying.
Now, it's true though that they stopped everything and it was
Yes,
like dead
absolutely.
space out
And the
there.
only airplanes you seen were fighters and our planes flying around.
There were no
and
other
there-
planes from other countries, nothing.
No,
Tell
no
me
other
your
planes from
thought.
other countries. There might have been some AWACS out there from American airplanes.
What's an AWAC?
which
Please
is-
share
It's got a
that.
big disc on.
Okay, okay.
Disc on. And there might have been some Army aircraft too that do.
Right.
But that I don't know for sure.
Okay,
But it was only military aircraft, but not around that particular airspace. Our job and the other airplane's job, until they were released to go to land to refuel or whatever they had to do, was to keep the airspace covered.
so you had to keep everything, I don't know how, if I'm even saying it right. You said keep the airspace covered. You also want to keep it vacant from anything else coming
Right.
in.
Right, and actually, at about our 10-hour mark, we got painted, which means all airplanes fly with a, I don't think this is classified or anything, but with
Oh, let's hope not.
with an IFF, identify friend or foe.
Yeah,
Even your commercial airlines have that. So
yeah,
so
I
you
get
don't
it.
you don't get caught blindsided by someone coming in and hitting you. Um, and
Now, this is, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know this, that it was 9/11, which actually brought Robert to the point where he had to get out of the military, because when he came down out of that plane, you were only in an exercise mode in the plane. It hadn't had enough on that plane in order for them to have what they needed.
the flying supplies, the food and things,
That it wasn't enough, because that had started out to be
and that's
a global exercise.
yeah, it was all
Now,
simulation.
would this be where many people want to say that, how do I put this? That all the conspiracies are out there because it was a global exercise and that there were so many nations involved.
Mhm.
And I even remember hearing about Prince Andrew was coming in to, see if he could get the Duchess of York out, but she wasn't even in the World Trade Center, and he was told to go back, and that there was no air flights at all from anybody except for you guys in the air at that time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Our airspace was totally stalled except for the military as needed aircraft.
And I'll tell you that we didn't know. My secretary, Karen, if she was here and not on vacation, she would probably be sitting with this interview with us. We did not know. We got the phone call. I called Karen. I said, Karen, I've got to go to the church. She says, I heard a plane hit the World Trade Center. I said, don't turn on anything. Meet me at the church. So she started getting dressed and she's heading to the church. By the time we get to the church, which at that time we were in Geneva, Illinois, not in St. Charles, people were already lined up at our doors.
Mhm.
We don't even know how the word got out that it would be our church that was open. It must have been other pastors. I have no idea, because we didn't have mobile phones like we've got now. And when we got there, I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, we were there for 11 hours praying. And at that point, we had not seen anything that had happened. Nothing, except for I was getting phone calls from parents. What should we do? What should we do with our children? I'm afraid for our children. Are we going to get bombed? These fears were genuine among the people, widespread amongst the nation, I'm sure. And what we did is we told every parent that called, if you're worried about your children, go get them out of school. If you're concerned about them, get them out of school. Call your pastor. Go get prayer. Do what we actually had at that time. My son was in a Christian school at that time. They emptied the school. He brought his friends over to the church because, you know how it is. First thing out, you want to go to church because, it's the safest place. And he brought him in. And when he came in, a woman came in after him that was a Muslim. Didn't even know that this was Taliban. We didn't know anything about that. We knew nothing. And Karen, who actually hasn't seen anything, she begins to minister to this woman and her family. Here, you're up there doing figure eights. We're down on the ground saying, nothing better to do, may as well win a soul to Jesus Christ. And she wins these Muslims to the Lord while you're up there doing figure eights to secure the country. Now, we felt, because we would take a break every now and then and walk outside. It was eerie outside. There was no planes in the air. The sky was crystal blue, and it was the freakiest feeling. How did it feel for you guys up in that plane, knowing that you had to do all those figure eights and you were securing the nation? Did it feel as creepy to you as it did to us?
No, there were some crew members that didn't realize what one of our missions statements is that we're a decoy.
Okay.
Okay, we're a decoy. So if a heat-seeking missile, say, was
Mhm.
fired at Air Force One, if we burn a little hotter, guess who's going to get hit?
Right.
Not Air Force One. It's going to be us. And so we had some people that were kind of concerned about that. But the thing is, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, because why would you leave your head of state or whatever out there hanging
With no protection.
with no protection?
So you were the complete protection for,
Yeah,
Our
we were the
president.
decoy, we were the communications, we're all that. And I talked about the being painted, and we were actually questioned about our status, why we were flying
Mhm.
at a certain time of day. And what they had to verify, because the guy just forgot to re-verify
So
the
there were a lot
codes.
of things that went on.
They forgot to re-verify the codes, and once we re-verified the codes, we weren't in threat of getting shot down by one of our own airplanes.
Right. This is how serious this was, is that they would shoot their own out of the sky if it was in the wrong
It
place.
didn't have the right codes.
Yeah. And this is very important to know, I think, because we common people don't really know what goes on the inside and what goes on in the workings of the mind. And we know that when you came down, you had what's known as hypoxia. And it
It's
was,
from flying,
it's from flying.
not
It's
from
like,
diving.
not from diving, but diving is the bends. Hypoxia is from air. And Robert suffers from hypoxia. But when you were done with that day, I mean, when that day was done, and after all those many, many hours of doing figure eights, what did you do after that? Did you watch what happened, or were you able to see what was happening while you were on the plane?
First of all, no, we
Okay.
actually stayed up, stayed alert. I don't know how many hours we were up, it doesn't really matter. And when I left, the idea would have been back in about, land in about 16 hours. Take your 8 hours rest, take off. But when I got back, or we landed, we actually had to take off within 6 hours again to go
Where you had to go.
where we had to go.
Mhm.
And from a 7-day trip, it turned into a 21-day trip. Just happened to be
Mhm.
my particular team that I was on. And I'm sorry, the team members, I don't remember which one I was on. I was blessed actually to be on all three teams, primary teams for
One,
NAIA,
whoopsie,
for NAIA.
two,
And from one time or the other, I was always on your
Three.
teams. And I don't remember which team particularly, and it really doesn't matter.
no.
And
At that point, why would it? As
right.
long as you know you have a
We were-
crew that's working.
The other couple airplanes that were out, left after us or whatever else, they were back within 7 to 10 days. We didn't get back to 21 days.
So you were a
No, I-
more important,
I don't know
not
if
that
it's-
you're greater than anybody else, but your flight had other missions that had to do.
Ours was the primary support for the president or for the United States. And we we couldn't communicate with anybody. Basically went off the grid. Most people know what that means.
It's all
When
right.
you can't communicate with anybody, or if it is, it's very limited. Can't let them know where you're at, what you're doing. And I cannot tell you how many bases I went to. I mean, stopped for how long.
Right.
I was on the 747, so you get what sleep you can when you're in the air. But my job, unfortunately, requires you to maintain and understand as a maintenance supervisor, maintenance person, to understand what's going on with all the systems. So you have
Yeah.
to know what's going
So you
on.
gotta be alert
So that if you
all the
land,
time.
if you land somewhere, you know what has to be fixed or what doesn't.
So you really have to be alert and be aware.
So, but you can still sleep.
But
But
are your
you-
senses, I'm asking this question because I'm not gonna let you know what happened. But all your senses are at the height when you're in an airplane as to what's going on in the airplane. Because
Has you guys ever tried to sleep on an airplane? Come on,
no,
let's
I
get real.
can't sleep on an airplane because I have a man sitting next to me that'll tell me about the air flight gear, that will tell me about the engines.
I can
that
tell you
will
what's
ta-
the delay. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I don't mean to be mean, but I tell, oh yeah, that was a little bit slower.
Yeah, and you know,
I
for
know, that-
someone like me, that's not doing
That
really
need-
a whole lot of good.
Yeah, he needed to probably throttle up on that one. Yeah, but that's just because that was just
You're training.
my ear was trained for that stuff.
He will tell you, we live in the Chicagoland area, and he will tell you.
Even though
I mean,
it's
right
not-
now you're in our kitchen. That's why you see all the herbs hanging there. And he will tell you that if a plane or a helicopter flies over, he'll tell you what's wrong with it. I mean, he literally does not make it easy to want to fly on an airplane
But still the same.
in his mind. Not for us lay people that are a little bit apprehensive about flights. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that this was the man that took care of the tarmac at Offutt Air Force Base. He did it, which usually takes a big crew. One man took control. Never happened before, will never happen again, according to Robert. And we're very proud of you, Robert, for what you did on 9/11 and your dedication to our nation. And I want you to look into this camera and tell the people about how you feel about this great nation and why you served and were willing. He was willing. He told me one day, he said if they got shot down, he would have gladly gone down for the president.
Well, it's not just that. The whole thing is that it's a particular, and it's usually generational people that join the military. Grandfather, father, uncle, aunts, cousins, they're the ones that join the military and encouraged you to do that. I myself knew at 10 years old I was going to join the military.
Did you?
I didn't plan on joining the Air Force. It just kind of happened that way. I wanted to join the Coast Guard, but there were some other stipulations I didn't have the money for to complete that. But so it's all generational. My father, who passed away this last year, was in Korea and Vietnam.
He did 9 tours
In Vietnam and
in
2 in
Vietnam.
Korea. So
How
I
many
took
in Korea?
2.
Oh, I didn't know it was
So he was
2.
gone this whole time. And then I had an uncle that served in the helicopters and for Vietnam, went to Alaska. And I talked to a guy today that said, yeah, we went to Alaska too for some training. I'm like, well, okay. And then they got called back before they had to go to Vietnam.
But his father, his birth father,
Served in Korea.
served in Korea, but worked for NASA.
Yes, he did. He
And
worked,
then he died when Robert was young
he was an electrician for
NASA.
Yeah.
So you kind of like have this in your blood,
yeah.
and it just, I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter where we go, we got to look at the airplanes.
But if anything I can say to anybody out there. Yes, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot more details. I can get into more detail.
No.
And sometimes I get into to conversations with people, only people that really understand.
Yeah.
Because when you get into somebody that was at the same clearance level, same things, then you can actually talk a little bit more. And but nothing's a waste. It looks grim sometimes, like even particularly now. I'm not trying to get political, but the thing is, if it wasn't for a good, strong military, even though sometimes the heads let you down, if it wasn't for them doing the mission that is put before them, it's all worth it in the end. Because without doing the mission, whether it's in Afghanistan, whether it was in Vietnam, whether it was in Korea, whether it was in World War II, whether it was in Bosnia, whether it was in Czechoslovakia, it doesn't matter where, Panama, it doesn't matter. You served to secure our country. Now, how that all happens so that the people here in the US can have all the freedoms that they have, think about it. Yep. You keep it away, you stop it before it can invade, and you make sure that that happens. But there's never ever been a time that if you served, that was a waste of time, regardless.
That's right.
Because no matter what you did, ask your buddy who may be down on you because you served in Afghanistan, what'd you do for this time? Oh, I got unemployment, maybe worked for a trucking company, not saying that those are bad jobs or bad things, but what did you do? I secured my country.
Yeah, and I want you to right now, Robert, talk to, possibly we may have some people watch this set. We're in Afghanistan. We know, you and I both know that we've received phone calls from people that are suffering some severe PTSD and moral injury that were in Afghanistan. And with the fall of Afghanistan, within these last few weeks, we've seen a lot of emotion coming to the surface from these veterans that lost limbs, that families, they died.
Wonder
And
why they did it for.
yeah, they wonder why they did it. And I want you to talk to them right now and encourage these wonderful men and women that took up the call these last 20 years.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna preach to y'all,
Thank God.
but even back when the Israelites, when they came back
Yeah.
from war, they had to be secured from everybody for 2 weeks.
30 days. It was 30 days.
Okay, that was 2 weeks. Okay,
Yeah,
but
30 days.
She's more accurate on that stuff. But I do know about that. If it wasn't for that, they weren't able to get back into the communities. But regardless of that, what you did, what effort you did, there's a lot of repercussions that come that seem like they blindside you, that seem like it's hopeless because why'd you do it? Well, you did it because you really felt that you're doing the right thing and you know that it's the right thing, whether you're a God person or not, you're doing it for a power higher than you. And the power higher than you may just be the government, may
Yeah,
just be
could
the
be your
United States
country.
of America, maybe the flag.
Maybe.
Okay. Mine's God. But yours is that. It doesn't,
Right.
but
It seems like, let me just, because I know what you're trying to say. It seems like what Robert might be trying to say is we're all one. And it didn't matter of any affiliation. It didn't matter what you believed in or what you didn't believe in. It was the cause.
and just think, if you were not have been there at the time that you were there, camping out in the desert, whatever. I slept on an airplane in Turkey because my tent was leaking water, so my plane didn't leak and I could run my air conditioning. It was fine. Okay. So
But not everybody had that privilege.
well, no, I was Air Force, and you know what I say about the Air Force. I'm not going to go into that because it creates some controversy. But and I was on big airplanes. Little airplanes don't have that thing. But we do these things because it's ingrained in us. It really pains me because I've seen some people talk that have been military families for generations, saying they're not going to encourage their children to go into the military. I think this is my own personal opinion. Everybody needs to serve the government, whether it's
Serve your country one way or another.
in the military or in the government aspect somehow, so that you understand what's at stake. Because I don't think you can really grasp it unless you're actually in the trenches. And
Yeah,
in the trenches could be just punching, doing a computer program. It could be planning a schedule. It could be doing weather. It could be anything. But that stuff is all important.
and everybody's part.
Mhm.
Like we've come across a lot of people when we ask them, where do you serve? Well, I didn't do what you did. I was stateside. Stateside does
Mhm.
all the paperwork and everything for those that are not stateside. Everything, it's like the hand. If you cut off the thumb, you can't grab anything. I mean, every part, every part. Like Karen and I, we felt like we did our part for our country that day. Now, to some people, that would be nothing. But to all those people that came into that church that day, and we had not seen a thing, and yet we stood with them, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I felt like we did our part.
Mhm.
And it may not be important. I mean, we never once heard, I'm not saying it didn't happen. We never once heard the president say, I thank all the clergy. I'm not saying he didn't. We didn't hear it, but we know what we did.
Mhm.
We do know what we did. And just recently, I came across somebody that was there, and they said, if it wasn't for that day that you were there and your doors would open, I probably wouldn't love America the way I love America today. Hey, one person. All of you that serve in Afghanistan, Iraq 1, 2,
Right, Comfort, Bosnia, Chechnya, Slovakia, a whole bunch of Panama,
everything.
Vietnam, all that stuff, all the way up.
We thank you.
Yeah.
And we say, welcome home. Because not everybody gets a welcome home. Robert didn't even get a welcome home
No,
when he got home.
that's a whole different story. But the thing is, we serve because we want to do the better good. And that's the bottom line. We believe in the principles of the Constitution. We believe in the our rights and things or as our free liberties. And the only way to secure that, even though the home front sometimes is a war too, is to continue to serve your military and realize, serving the military, realize that what you're doing is for a better good. Even if it's to better good yourself to get into college, it's still
For the
for a better
better good.
good. Because
That's
it's
a
make
good
it,
point.
because yeah, if you're doing it just for college because tuition's good, then that's awesome. If you're doing it for the healthcare, that's awesome too. It doesn't matter. The whole point is that I personally have a personal responsibility to this country. I'm gonna go off a bunny trail real quick.
Uh-oh, here
When I
we
bought,
go.
when I bought my first house, okay, I was stationed in England. I bought it all. At the time, there wasn't online, so it was all telephone, talking to realtors and all that stuff. Okay, uh, I called them, arranged it, planned a loan, all that stuff, so that I can get, when I got back to my base that I was going to, which was off it, I would be able to move right into my place. And though I didn't have any furniture for about a month and a half,
That's all
so I
right.
slept on the floor, but that's all right. But so I uh, I said, okay, well, this is all for the good. I said, this is what I've strived and worked for, is to serve my country, to come back. I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen when I joined my new unit. Okay, that's a whole different. That's what we were talking about earlier. But I don't regret any of it, and I would not want to go repeat it, mind you, because there's life experiences that I don't want to have to repeat. There's a lot of things that were not so good, but more things that were good, and for the purpose of the whole thing, and a whole purpose of the general people, for everybody in general,
Yeah.
for our country. I believe in this country. I believe in what I do, and I believe that I owed something to it, even as a 10-year-old kid, knowing that I was going to join the
That's
military
awesome.
somehow. That I needed to pay it back, even if it was only for one term, 2 years, 4 years, whatever it is that you serve. If it wasn't for that, and mind you, there's a lot of good shows at the time, TV and whatnot, because that's when TV started getting it. That actually helped encourage me. But I believe, because I'm a generational person, my family all served in the military, one way or another, and this is my best way to say thank you for what you've done for me. And that's really about all I can say. It's worth it.
Well, thank you, Robert. We did go live on Facebook, so say hi to everybody. And I just want you all to know that Robert's story may not seem like anything to some people, or may seem a whole lot to some people. But the fact remains that the message is clear. He loved his country enough to serve it no matter what. And he was willing to do whatever it took
For a combined 30 years.
for a combined 30 years. And he has the last flag flown over the White House that Barack Obama gave. He's got the last flag that was presented to him by our American Legion, VFW, and AM vets
At the end of my
at
8
the end of
years reserve
of
time.
those reserves. Yes. And that's actually when we started Be a Hero to a Hero, in honor
2011.
of Robert. And if you hadn't had your service, and if you hadn't gotten off that plane or walked in front of that plane, I might not ever looked at you a second time. But that night I went, who's that? To find out a little bit later that was
Quite a
Robert.
bit later, actually.
Yeah, now we're married. God help him. Now he's in the worst war ever because he's married to me.
Oh,
But God bless you all.
thank you all.
And we thank you.
Please send questions if you have any.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please put them in. Robert will get back to you as soon as he can. We can't see if any of you are on. We don't even know if anybody's alive on right now. But we just thank you all. And goodbye. And Robert, I just want to say thank you to you, and how much we really do honor your service. And
We honor your service.
well, I'm going to tell you, I'm your biggest fan. And you know I'm your biggest fan. And our son Creighton's your biggest fan. And our children are learning, grandkids are learning to salute.
You got my grandson.
Yeah, we got the little boy, 3-year-old, with flight suit. He's already playing airplanes.
Yeah,
And I'm just really excited about the fact that we still have the greatest nation in the
Yes,
world
we
on
do.
the worst day possible.
mhm,
And ladies and gentlemen, we need to continue to pray for our nation
yes.
and our allies. And we need to stay in that mode.
Stay the course and continue to be the free country that everybody in the world
Wants to be.
wants to be. That's why they all want to come here.
Yes.
People die to come here, and that's a fact.
Amen.